In Chapter 8, we are going to explore the question, what impact do delinquent peer groups and gangs have on delinquency? As we know, the parents are the primary source of influence over children in their early years. As juveniles enter adolescence, the peer group becomes or comes to occupy a central, in many cases, the central place in juveniles' lives or adolescents' lives. Adolescents start spending more time with their peers, they attach more importance to their peers, and they are more strongly influenced by their peers. So it's no surprise then that many, if not most, adolescents who commit delinquent offenses, they do so in the company of their peers. There are types of peers in a young person's life. Children tend to form cliques, small groups of friends who they share intimate knowledge and confidences, but they also belong to bigger groups and crowds. And these are loosely organized groups who share common interests and activities such as sports and hobbies and religion. Adolescent self-image is formed by perception of one's place in the social world, and acceptance by peers has a major impact on an adolescent's socialization. Peer relations and delinquency are closely related. Data shows that many, if not most, adolescents who commit delinquent acts do so in the company of their peers. It's called co-offending. 73% of all delinquent offenses were committed in groups, according to official data. 79% were drug violations, 71% were assaults, 60% vandalism, 44% were thefts. Adolescents who maintain delinquent friends are more likely to engage in antisocial behavior and drug use and overall delinquent behavior in general. So, do anti-peers cause delinquency, or do antisocial youths seek delinquent friends? Research shows that the effect of delinquent peers on delinquency is not the same in all circumstances. The effect of delinquency peers is greatest when all of the adolescent's friends are delinquent versus only some. It is greatest when the adolescent friends form a cohesive group. That is, they all know and interact with one another. And it is greatest when these friends hold beliefs conducive to delinquency, approve the adolescent's delinquency, and pressure the adolescent to engage in delinquency. Also, greater depending on the type of offense. If we're talking about drug use versus, committing a robbery, that's also dependent on delinquency. These conditional effects are easily explained by the various theories that we have gone through already. According to the control theory, antisocial adolescents seek out like-minded peers for criminal association and to conduct criminal transactions because of low control. They're poorly supervised and weakly attached to parents. On the other hand, delinquent peers may reduce a juvenile's fear of direct controls or stake in conformity and their level of internal control. So it's kind of one hand over the other. According to the labeling theory, deviant kids are forced to choose deviant peers because of the previous negative label given to them by some official source like the juvenile system or some informal source like school or a parent. According to social learning theory, delinquent friends cause law-abiding youth to get in trouble because they are more likely to model their behavior if frequently exposed to the behavior. According to the routine activities, according to this theory, kids with like-minded peers without parental control are more likely to be involved in delinquency because they engage in unstructured socialization versus being involved in after-school activities. There's no such controls in place. According to the rational choice theory, kids choose to get involved with delinquent peers because they have high status in the youth culture. The way they weigh the benefits. Remember, the benefits versus the cost. If the benefits outweigh then they're going to choose that option. Usually some of the benefits might be financial. It might be, social capital or their popularity versus the cause. What kind of punishment am I going to get if I do this? So we can agree that peers can be influential on one's decision to engage in delinquency or even to not engage in delinquency. What influence, of any, does gangs or being a part of a gang have on delinquency? Well, first we have to examine what actually is a gang. We all have our idea of what a gang is, but let's talk about those youth gangs or street gangs, sometimes referred to as. We all have this perception. Maybe it's through experience, but more likely through TV or movies that have polarized gangs or that gave us our views of gangs. But what is a gang? Depends on who you ask for a definition. There isn't a common definition shared by all. The police have general definitions depending on which police agency you ask. The National Gang Center has a distinct 5-requirement test to determine what constitutes a gang. That's outlined in the book. Generally a gang is a group of youths who collectively engage in delinquent behaviors. It's a general definition. Gang expert Malcolm Klein, among other over 100 other experts in the field of gangs, defined a gang that included 2 factors that stand out in all of the definitions provided. There are 2 factors that stand out. Members have self-recognition of their gang status and a special vocabulary, clothing, signs, colors, graffiti, and names, meaning that they have existed for a period of time, that they have group identity. That's Factor 1. Factor 2, there's a commitment to criminal activity. So how do gangs develop? How do they develop? Gangs have been around as early as the 1600s in London. The first mention of youth gangs in America was in the 1780s when prison reformers noted the presence of gangs hanging out on the streets of Philadelphia. In the 1920s, Frederick Thrasher conducted a study of over 1,300 youth gangs in Chicago. And his theory, he concluded that the control mechanisms of local institutions is revealed by a number of things: the disintegration of family life, inefficiency of schools, formalism and externality of religion, corruption and indifference in local politics, low wages and monotony in occupational activities, jobs, unemployment, lack of opportunity for wholesome recreation. All these factors enter into the picture of the moral and economic frontier and create cracks in the normal fabric of society, coupled with deterioration in housing, sanitation, and other conditions of life in lower income, lower developed areas and urban areas, as he defined as slum, gives the impression of general disorganization and decay. The gang functions with reference to these conditions in 2 ways. It offers a substitute for what society fails to give, such as play, fun, adventure activities, which can lead to delinquent behavior. And 2, it provides a relief from suppression and distasteful behavior. It fills a gap and affords an escape when adult society does not meet the needs of the lower class youths. Gangs provide an alternative lifestyle for normal boys. At the time, the 1920s, we're talking about boys. There was a great deal of attention paid to gangs in the 1950s and early 1960s. Little was paid to gangs as a social problem. In the late 1960s and 70s, gangs emerged again in the 1980s, and concern about gangs returned and continues today. Why did they emerge? One reason was and is Currently, still, the uneasy economic climate as a result of the shift in manufacturing jobs to low-paying service jobs that occurred and still exists. Adult role models and stable families have declined. The lack of adult supervision gave kids more freedom and limited job prospects as they matured. All of these things played a role. We're going to turn and look at, through the rest of this chapter, exploring gangs, our contemporary gangs. We're going to look at the makeup of these gangs. We're going to talk about control measures and the difficulty with those control measures.